She didn't look back when she said it. "Don't wake them." Just a whisper, soft as breath. Then her hand brushed mine, telling me to follow. The hallway was half lit by the spill of a nightlight from the living room. The air smelled faintly of sleep and rain, that heavy silence houses have when everyone else is dreaming. I could still hear the echo of laughter from earlier, how her voice had lingered longer than the others, how I tried not to notice. She moved quietly, barefoot, the hem of her loose shirt brushing against her thighs. I followed her, not because she asked, but because I didn't know how not to. The kitchen was dim, the light above the sink left on. She turned it down even lower until the room felt like a secret. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Her hand went to the cupboard, reaching for mugs, and I watched how her wrist curved, how the soft light traced her skin. "You shouldn't still be up," she said, not turning around. "I couldn't sleep," I answered. My voice came out lower than I expected. She glanced over her shoulder, half a smile. "Too much noise in your head?" Something like that. I wanted to say it wasn't noise. It was her laugh, her eyes, the way she'd touched my arm earlier when she thanked me for helping clean up. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "I could make tea." She let out a small laugh, more breath than sound. "You're a guest, not staff." Still, she let me. The kettle hissed softly as I filled it. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, her gaze fixed on me but not in a way that pinned. More like she was studying something familiar she hadn't looked at closely before. "Your mother said you're finishing school soon," she said. "Next month." "That's good." A pause. "You've always seemed older than you are." I smiled, though my hands trembled slightly when I set the kettle down. "You've always seemed—" I stopped. "Seemed what?" The air thickened. I could hear the faint ticking of the clock above the stove. "Untouchable," I said finally. Something flickered behind her eyes. Surprise, then something softer. She didn't answer right away. Her lips parted slightly as if to speak, but instead she reached past me for the tea tin, her arm grazing my chest. Just a brush, but it set off a quiet chain reaction under my skin. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. Her tone wasn't scolding. It was weary, like she'd been told that before in another life. "Why not?" "Because they sound like you mean them." I did. She poured the hot water, movements careful, deliberate. Steam curled between us, and her face glowed faintly in it, blurred and beautiful. I couldn't tell if she was avoiding my eyes or if she simply couldn't hold them any longer. Then a sound. Footsteps on the stairs. Her head turned sharply toward the doorway. The kitchen light cut across her face. Fear, or maybe guilt, flashing for half a second. "Go," she whispered. I didn't move. "Please," she said this time, lower, closer, her hand brushing my wrist again. The same touch as before, but this time trembling. And just before I stepped back into the dark, she looked at me once more, steady, unblinking, like she wanted to memorize the distance between us before it changed. I woke to the smell of coffee and the low hum of conversation downstairs. For a second, I thought last night had been a dream. The whisper, the kitchen light, her eyes meeting mine in that half-dark. But then I heard her laugh. Not loud, just enough to break through the morning quiet. I found her at the counter, hair pulled back loosely, one hand on a mug, the other flipping through her phone. The morning light softened everything. The lines near her eyes, the warmth in her skin. She looked different in daylight. Realer. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. She looked up, that same quick half-smile. "You're up early." "So are you." "Old habit." She gestured to the mug beside her. "Coffee? Please." Our fingers brushed when she passed it to me. Not by accident, or maybe it was. Either way, she didn't pull back immediately, and neither did I. Just that small warmth where skin met skin, enough to tilt the air between us again. Her mother called from the next room, asking about breakfast, and the moment snapped clean. She turned away quickly, her voice steady when she answered. Later, when it was just the two of us again, her mother napping, the house quiet, she was at the dining table, sorting through papers. I sat nearby, pretending to read. "You've been here a lot lately," she said without looking up. "Your mom keeps inviting me. She likes having company. And you." That earned me a glance. "I don't mind." She tried to return to her papers, but I caught the way her hand stilled, just for a second, before moving again. I asked, softly, "You live alone most of the time, right?" A pause. Then, "Yes." Her tone wasn't defensive, just quiet. "It wasn't supposed to be that way. My husband and I—" She stopped herself, rearranging a stack of bills that didn't need rearranging. "We grew apart. Years ago." I didn't say anything. She didn't need comfort, just space. "I thought I'd be used to it by now," she said finally. "But the silence gets loud." That silence stretched between us again, but now it felt like we were both listening to the same thing. When she stood, a sheet of paper fluttered to the floor. I bent down at the same time she did. Our heads nearly touched. For a heartbeat, everything narrowed. The faint scent of her shampoo, the warmth radiating from her, the curve of her neck when she turned slightly. She froze, eyes flicking to mine, lips parting like she wanted to say something but didn't trust it yet. I straightened first, letting her take the paper, giving her an escape. She stayed still. "Sorry," I murmured. "Don't be," she said, voice low, rougher than before. Her hand rested on my forearm, brief, deliberate, then gone. We both knew it wasn't nothing. She exhaled, looking toward the window, sunlight cutting across her profile. "It's strange," she said softly. "How some people make you forget to be careful." I didn't answer, didn't move. But when she finally looked at me again, she didn't hide the tremor in her smile. And neither did I. Started with rain. The kind that blurs everything outside until the world feels smaller. Just the two of us and the sound of it hitting the windows. Her mother had gone out earlier, visiting a neighbor. I was supposed to leave soon after, but the downpour kept me there. "You can wait until it slows," she said, already reaching for a towel for me. "I don't think it's going to," I said, shaking water from my hair. She laughed softly, holding the towel out. "You're soaked." Our hands met around the fabric, her fingers cool, mine damp. For a second, neither of us moved. "Sit," she said finally, motioning toward the couch. "You'll ruin the floor." The living room felt too quiet. The rain filled the pauses that words couldn't. She sat across from me, legs tucked under her, eyes darting to the window like she needed something to look at that wasn't me. "You know," she said after a long moment, "you shouldn't be here this much. People talk." "Do they?" "Eventually." She smiled faintly. "They always do." I wanted to tell her I didn't care, but the truth was more complicated. I did care, not about what people said, but about what she might lose if they did. She glanced back at me then. "You're quiet today. I don't want to make things harder for you." Her brows pulled slightly together. "You think you could?" The question hung there, heavier than it should have been. When the thunder rolled outside, she flinched slightly. Reflex, nothing dramatic, just a soft tightening in her shoulders. "Still hate storms?" I asked. She looked surprised. "You remember that?" "I remember everything you say." That landed differently. She looked down, lips pressing together, like she wanted to hide a smile and couldn't. The power flickered, then went out. The room dimmed. Rain still loud. Everything else hushed. She sighed. "I'll get candles. I'll help." In the dark, we moved too close too often. Reaching for the same drawer, brushing arms, her hair grazing my cheek when she leaned forward. The air thickened with all the things we didn't say. When she struck the match, the tiny flame lit her face first, soft gold across her mouth, her eyes catching mine. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she whispered. "Like what?" "Like you're waiting for me to stop pretending." I swallowed. "Are you?" Her breath hitched. The match burned low, and she blew it out, leaving us in the faint glow of a single candle. "I can't," she said finally. "You know that." But she didn't move away. I could feel the warmth of her knee brushing mine, the pulse in her throat, every small, impossible detail. A phone buzzed suddenly, sharp, loud in the quiet. Her mother's name on the screen. She stepped back like waking from a spell, answering quickly, voice steady. "Yes, I'm fine, just the storm." Her hand trembled slightly as she hung up. When she turned back, we both knew what almost happened, and that it wouldn't stay almost forever. The storm had passed overnight, but the air still held it. That heavy, charged stillness that lingers after thunder. By morning, the house was quiet again. I was supposed to leave that day. She said it herself, lightly, like it was nothing. "You've stayed long enough to make my mother suspicious." But she didn't say it like she wanted me gone. We spent the morning in fragments, coffee, half-sentences, long pauses. Every sound felt too loud. Every silence, louder. When her mother went out for groceries, it was just us again. She was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter even though it was already clean. I leaned against the doorway, watching her. "You're doing that thing again," I said. "What thing?" "Pretending not to think." She didn't turn around. "And what am I thinking?" I stepped closer. "That you want to stop this before it starts." She let out a slow breath, setting the cloth down. "You think I don't know how this looks? Maybe I don't care how it looks." She finally faced me. "You should." Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. There was a flicker there, something between warning and want. I took another step forward. She didn't move back. "Everyone already has their opinions," I said quietly. "They'll think what they want no matter what we do." Her hand tightened around the counter's edge. "You're too young to understand how permanent that kind of judgment is." "Then tell me to stop." She opened her mouth, no sound came out. I reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingers grazed her cheek. She didn't flinch. She just closed her eyes for a second, as if trying to remember what breathing felt like. "This is wrong," she whispered, but it didn't sound like a refusal. "It doesn't feel wrong," I said. "Don't." Her voice cracked then. Soft, not broken, just tired of fighting something she'd already lost. "You don't know what I've already risked just letting you in this far." "Then tell me what to do." She opened her eyes. "Leave." I nodded once, but my feet didn't move. We stood there, the small distance between us shrinking with every uneven breath. The scent of her, soap, rain, something faintly floral, filled the air. She reached out, barely touching my sleeve. "You make me forget the years between us," she said. "That's not fair." Her thumb traced the fabric, lingering. I could feel her pulse through it. "I don't want fair," I said. Her hand fell to her side, then back to the counter, like she couldn't decide whether to hold on or let go. "Say something," I whispered. She met my gaze, her expression unreadable. "If I say it, I can't take it back." I leaned in, close enough to feel her breath tremble against my jaw. "Then don't." She hesitated, lips parting. A half-second from crossing that line, and then the sound. The front door opening, her mother's voice calling out. Her body went rigid. Neither of us moved. The unspoken hung in the air, heavier than any touch. The door closed behind her mother, but the echo of her voice stayed in the house long after. We didn't speak. We couldn't. She busied herself with the same towel, the same counter, that nervous ritual she did when control slipped through her hands. I stood in the doorway again, useless, trying to breathe past the sound of my own heartbeat. Finally, she said, "She saw your jacket." My throat tightened. "What?" "When she came in. She noticed it by the door. Asked why it was still here." Her hands trembled just enough to make the light catch on her wedding ring. One she never took off even though she hadn't worn the title in years. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That you forgot it last night." She stopped. I don't know why that lie came out first. Maybe because it sounded less dangerous. Less dangerous. The words hung between us, hollow and wrong. "She doesn't suspect anything," I said too quickly. She looked up then, finally meeting my eyes. "Should she?" I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because everything in me already had. Later, when the sky turned the same pale gray as the night we met in the kitchen, she found me sitting on the back steps. The air smelled of damp wood and something like regret. You should probably go soon, she said. Probably. She sat beside me anyway. Our shoulders almost touched. You know, she began quietly. She told me last night that you remind her of your father. That caught me off guard. My father. She said he used to look at me the same way you do. I turned to her. What does that mean? She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. It means I'm old enough to remember what I should have learned the first time. You knew him? Before you were born. Just barely. He was… She stopped herself. Kind. And careless. The silence cracked open between us. I felt my chest tighten, like a string had been pulled too far. So that's why you've been… trying not to repeat something I can't fix, she said. Her voice broke, soft but sharp enough to cut through everything else. You think this is the first time someone's made me forget where the lines are? I looked away, hands clenched against my knees. That's not what this is. No, I shook my head. Because I see you. Not some echo of what you lost. She stared at me. That long, quiet look that could undo me without a word. You shouldn't say things like that. You said that before. And you didn't listen. Her hand brushed mine. Once. Then again, slower this time, deliberate. The air between us shifted. Not lighter. Not darker. Just inevitable. Her voice was barely a whisper. If you stay, I won't stop you again. I turned toward her, heart pounding, everything else falling away. She didn't move, just watched me, waiting, trembling slightly, the kind of trembling that isn't fear but recognition. Outside, thunder murmured again, far off. Inside, the distance between us finally began to collapse. The rain had returned by nightfall. Not a storm this time, just a quiet, steady rhythm that filled the house with a sound too calm for what was happening inside it. Her mother had gone to bed early. The lights were low. Only the living room lamp was on, throwing soft gold across the space where we stood. She was at the bookshelf, pretending to look for something, her back to me. I could see the faint tremor in her hand as she reached for a book she didn't really want. You're leaving tomorrow, she said. Supposed to. She turned slightly, still holding the book, her fingers white against the spine. You should. I know. But you won't. I shook my head once. No, the silence that followed was heavier than any word could have been. She set the book down and finally faced me. Her hair had come loose from the tie, falling in soft strands against her face. She didn't fix it. You think this is something you'll look back on and not regret? I stepped closer. Do you? She let out a shaky breath, her voice low. You make it hard to breathe sometimes. I could say the same. When I reached for her, she didn't move away. My fingers brushed her wrist, tentative, waiting. She didn't pull back. Instead, she lifted her hand, hesitated, and let it rest against my chest, right over my heart. Her voice came out like a confession. I'm terrified of what happens if I don't stop this. Then don't stop it yet. She laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. You say that like it's easy. It isn't. The clock ticked somewhere in the background. Her breath came unevenly, matching mine. I touched her face. Just my fingertips at first, tracing the line of her jaw, brushing a stray lock of hair away. Her eyes closed, as if that single touch was more dangerous than anything else that could happen. When she opened them again, something had shifted. The walls, the hesitation, the guilt, all still there, but blurred by something stronger. Tell me to go, I said. She didn't. I stepped closer until there was no distance left that could save either of us. The space between our words, our breaths, gone. Her hand slid from my chest to my neck, her thumb brushing the corner of my jaw. She looked at me for a long moment, searching, weighing, memorizing. This will change everything, she whispered. I know. Her forehead rested against mine, and for a heartbeat, everything went still. The rain, the air, the ache that had been building for days. Neither of us moved, but everything inside us did. Then she exhaled. Not a sigh, not surrender, just the sound of someone choosing something they'd run from too long. When she finally spoke, it was only one word: stay. And that was it. The line we'd drawn for so long quietly disappeared, and what was left between us wasn't forbidden anymore, just real. The rain stopped before sunrise. When light finally crept through the curtains, it was soft and gray, the kind of morning that doesn't rush you. She was already awake, sitting by the window with her knees drawn up, a blanket wrapped loosely around her shoulders. The quiet around her wasn't tense anymore. It was the kind that comes after choosing something you can finally stop hiding from. I stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure what to say. After everything, words suddenly felt too small. She looked over her shoulder and smiled. Tired, gentle, real. "You're still here." I said I would be. That earned a small nod. "You did." I walked closer, the floor creaking softly under my feet. The air still smelled faintly like rain and her shampoo, that mix of warmth and calm that made everything feel suspended, half dream, half truth. "Do you regret it?" I asked. She turned fully toward me. "No," she said, "but I'm afraid I should." I sat beside her. "Maybe we can just let it be what it is." She let out a soft laugh. "You make it sound easy again." "Not easy," I said. "Just honest." She leaned back against the wall, her shoulder brushing mine. "I've spent most of my life trying to be careful, trying not to want things I couldn't have." I looked at her. "And now?" She smiled, eyes tracing the faint line of light edging across the windowpane. "Now I just want to stop pretending I don't feel alive." The quiet between us was warm this time. No hesitation, no fear, just the steady rhythm of two people who'd already crossed the hardest part. When she reached for my hand, she didn't hesitate. Our fingers fit naturally, as if they'd done it 100 times before. Outside, the garden shimmered from the rain. Birds began their cautious morning chatter. The world had moved on, unaware, and for once we didn't need to hide inside it. She rested her head lightly against my shoulder. "What happens now?" "I don't know," I said, "but maybe that's okay." Her hand tightened around mine, and she whispered, "Maybe it is." I turned to her then, brushing my thumb across her knuckles, and for a long moment we just sat there. Two people who'd run out of excuses and found something better than safety. Before I could say anything else, she looked up and kissed my forehead, soft, certain. The kind of gesture that carries more truth than any promise. "Whatever happens," she said, "thank you for not looking away." I smiled, because that's all she ever wanted, to be seen without explanation, without apology. And maybe that's all I wanted too. The light grew brighter. The world started again. And for once, we didn't. We just stayed. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?